will prove in the Saturday night meeting.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient Social Selling for the Car Industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
If you run a service drive, you know these days first impressions matter. But when your advisors are tied up with inbound phone calls, they tend to neglect their other, more important duties. And did you know 75% of all service calls are frequently asked questions and routine requests? Still, the average dealer misses up to 30% of inbound calls, adding up to a ton of missed service opportunity and increased customer churn. 68% of callers actually go elsewhere if they can't get through, which means you could be losing $60,000 to $70,000 every month in service revenue simply from missing calls. So who will pick up? Introducing Brooke.
Hi there.
Your best service scheduling assistant. Brooke is the first intelligent digital voice assistant to answer, handle, and appoint all of your inbound service calls. Hiring Brooke means absolutely no call goes unanswered, boosting your customer satisfaction and reducing your overhead costs. And talking to Brooke is like talking to a friend, with human-level understanding in a friendly conversational voice. Her conversational intelligence is built on millions of actual service industry conversations, making her the easiest onboard you'll ever have. She can handle any volume of calls and follows your policies every step of the way, 24/7. That means even when the lights are off, Brooke is always on.
And I can do it without missing a beat.
You really do check all the boxes. Book with Brooke today. Visit Brooke.ai or call 866-942-1236. Finally, the perfect match.
Welcome to Loud Motorsport. I'm Crystal, the general manager here. So we're always hesitant bringing someone new in, especially with COVID and bringing a new company in and trying to get that launched and getting it launched the right way without having someone in store. Rapid Recon was able to give us the communication and the support that we needed from day one. Very fast to respond. It made it seamless from start to finish. Anytime that someone talks about a low volume store, they think that you can just walk around, not very many people to track down, to get approvals. That's not the case. If we want to get the car through the process, we still have jobs to do. We still have customers to help. And this really puts it right at our fingertips and allows us to approve it instantly, even if we have a customer sitting in front of us. Since bringing Rapid Recon on, we have really improved our sales. It's allowed us to get the cars to the front line a lot quicker, which in turn gives us more volume. So we went from an average of 75 a month to now averaging over 100 just in a short amount of time. I would recommend Rapid Recon to anyone that is even remotely thinking about it. Thanks for stopping by today. For more information on Loud Motorsport, you can always go to loudmotorsport.com or stop in here in Minerva, Ohio. We ship all over the country.
And a special thanks to our sponsors as we go into it. So go ahead, Mr. Jeff.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're watching us from, or whatever day you're watching us from. Thanks for joining us. And we appreciate everybody taking the time to be here. We do have a short disclaimer which says the views and opinions of everybody on today are that of our guests and not of the Auto Hub Show or Ian Nethercott or Jeff Polo. And I am looking at a certain gentleman from Philadelphia to keep his opinions to him. No, just kidding. Thank you all for joining us. Books, Ian.
And a few book recommendations. I had a little trouble here. There's a lot of books. So the Car Show book was one. Auto Empire by Eric Choi and Richard Choi. And then this one called Showtime, which I don't think's in print anymore. There was someone selling it on Amazon for all the money in the world, but it definitely looks like an interesting book. If you're curious about other books, specifically on automotive or the best books, you can look at the link there below, which is bookauthority.org, best automotive history book. So if you're curious about books and automotive, there's some great books there. I think there's about 70. Oops. Going forward. Oops.
Right. Pause time.
There we go. And then our disclaimer, Jeff. Go ahead.
I just disclaimed.
Oh, okay, you did. Okay, great. So the show today is the Auto Hub, our Auto shows worth the money on the Auto Hub show. So let's get into it. Go ahead.
The
Jeff.
Auto Hub Show is definitely worth the money. And thank you all for joining us today. We have a very eclectic group of guests. There, I've done my first tongue tie. And joining us, and frankly, we appreciate everybody, their first-time guests. And today, being the auto shows, are they worth the money? And of course, I know that the three guests will say, "Heck yeah!" And we're polite people, so we don't use stronger words on the Auto Hub Show. But it's certainly been a big thing over the last couple of years. So, I've always been a fan of auto shows. But we'll just introduce our guests. First of all, we have Blair Quayle joining us here from the sprawling metropolis of Vancouver, BC, Canada, and British Columbia, who is the CEO, president, guy of everything for the New Car Dealers Association of BC, who actually happens to run the Vancouver Auto Show. Blair, please say hi and give us a brief introduction.
Well, hey, thanks very much for having me on. I look forward to it's an important topic, something we're thinking about a lot out here in British Columbia. As you may know, BC now leads North America in the adoption of electric vehicles. I think we just hit 13% of new car sales are EVs out here. So it's a particularly important topic for manufacturers these days, and a place here in Vancouver where we're well positioned to show that off.
Perfect. Well, thank you for taking the time. Of everybody here, you get up the earliest, well, next to Ian and I, so that's great. Next we have here is Jason Campbell, who is the general manager of the eastern version of the Vancouver Auto Show from the Canadian International Auto Show in Toronto, Ontario. Please say hi and introduce yourself to everybody, Jason.
Thanks, Jeff. I've been with the show since 2015. The Canadian International Auto Show is the largest show in the country. We generally get around 330 to 350,000 people coming through over 10 days. We were a 10-day show like the Chicago and New York and LA shows, and twice the length of the show that we're in Vancouver. And we're on the earlier part of the season, whereas our friends in Vancouver normally kind of mid to late season running of the show.
Cool. Yeah, and those guys in LA can have a show whenever they want because everybody comes out there. And speaking of LA and all the fancy cars they have there, with East LA in Van Cleek, Ontario, Canada, we have Paul Taylor, who is from Cars by Taylor, automotive restoration and automotive restoration specialist, but also a restoration show TV castmate, so who can speak about his end of auto shows. Paul, say hi to everybody, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much, Jeff. Ian, thanks for having me on the show. I'm honored. Yeah, so Cars by Taylor, a company I run with my wife. We do a lot of buying and selling right now, a lot of transport between North America and Europe, if you will, and a few restorations on the side, some consulting, as I said, and we've just started our own podcast as well. I'm delighted. I think this is an amazing topic to cover today, and I'm excited to be involved. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much. We did have some people from the Chicago Auto Show, but they sent their regrets. They, for some reason, have to travel somewhere at the last minute. So we do thank them for that, and we'll get them on at a later date. And we're actually going into some recorded interviews one-on-one with people, which we'll put onto our website. But we'll go right into our questions. Ian, if you could take that away, please.
Yeah, our auto show is worth the money in today's new automotive world. So let's start with Toronto. Let's start with Jason on that.
Well, obviously, you know our answer. Of course. But they have proved themselves worth the money for over 100 years. And there's a reason why car manufacturers, people looking to come and buy cars, come to auto shows, because there's no better one-stop shop where they've got an audience that not only is interested in buying cars. In fact, about 79% of our show attendees in 2020, the last time we ran, said that they were in the market for a car in the next 12 months. But not only are they interested in cars, but they're willing to pay money to come. And so there's very few places where you can have as many qualified buyers in one spot and influence people that were perhaps considering your competition to come and take a look at your products. I mean, it's very easy today for manufacturers to talk to their existing consumers. But what is harder is to try and reach out and find those people that were considering your competitors' vehicles and have a chance to win them over to your products. And about 25% of the folks that came to the show in 2020 considered adding another vehicle to their shopping list because they came to the show. And you get a chance to touch and feel, experience the car firsthand and in person, all within, let's say, a 2.5 hour window. And you can see all of what's available in the marketplace. And even at the last show, which we were planning, which was the 2022 show, which unfortunately because of the pandemic we had to cancel, we still had 75% of all new cars sold in Canada planning to be here and represented at the show. And that's pretty good endorsement for the time when you're in the middle of a pandemic and manufacturers still want to come and be a part of that experience. The consumer audience is huge. Our show in particular is the largest in the country and compares very favorably with any shows around the world in terms of its quality of presentation. And I'm sure that car manufacturers are going to continue to be part of our experience. And, we do have some that are coming saying, you know what, I'm going to not participate this year. I'm going to skip this year. Often it's because of product. Right now, there's product challenges, which all manufacturers are facing. But even still, we've got a very big supply of manufacturers that want the space in the show. And to be able to win over new customers, in particular, a lot of the new brands that are coming into the marketplace that customers don't have the experience with, that don't have the knowledge of. There's no better way to kind of prove that you are a player on the scene than being here as part of the big show.
Interesting. Blair, what do you think?
Well, I'll weigh in and say, yeah, heck yes, we think they're worth the money. Jason gave a good overview. A couple of points that I'd add to that in here. For sure, the one-stop shop is what I hear from consumers all the time. The chance to come and see so much in one place, and in Vancouver, one place where you're dry, and you can see what options are there. Particularly now, as Jason mentioned, technology is what our industry is all about these days, and with new electric vehicles, not everybody understands sort of what an EV is, how it runs, etc. So it's a terrific opportunity for people to come and ask questions in a low pressure environment where they can ask the questions they want. And in Vancouver, for pretty much as long as I've been around, at least a decade, we've been doing green ride and drives to give people a chance to actually put a bum in a seat of an EV and take it for a spin. To see what it's actually like. When we first started it, I think there were 5 models available. To when we last did the show in 2019, we had 40 something vehicles available for people to try. So that's become, such an important part of our show, such a real value added for the members or for the manufacturers and our dealer members to have a chance to show off and give people a chance to take a spin in an EV. So those are a couple of the points I'd add to Jason's good overview.
I have a
Yeah, it was
quick question
actually.
for you on that.
Yep.
Blair, do you get any kickback from manufacturers that don't have an EV when you're showcasing such EVs in those test drives?
Well, not that much, actually. Particularly now, where here in British Columbia, our association that owns the auto show as well manages the Clean BC, or what's now called the Go Electric program, the rebates and incentives for people when you purchase a vehicle. So it's been very much part of our show for a long time. So manufacturers are used to it, expect it, understand it, and now with all of the pressures on manufacturers by governments, with some pretty steep penalties and targets coming, um, they really see this as a value for them to get out there and be seen by consumers and help start working their way towards these targets. As I said at the top of the show, we're I think about 13% adoption of EVs now, which is a good long way towards the next target that's coming in 2025. But manufacturers really see it as an opportunity for us. As Jason mentioned, the last year when we were all looking at can we put a show on or not for this year, a lot of the manufacturers were just in that strange transitional spot of about to come with a whole bunch of models, a bunch of EVs, and they weren't quite ready yet. So I think the 2023 shows will be just a spectacular offering of all things technology and especially on the EV front.
Paul, what do you think? I mean, obviously not on the electric side, but obviously shows that all these shows seem to involve classic cars and oil and gas as well. What do you think?
I think Blair and Jason have covered this very well. But the larger shows, and obviously I come from a background of the smaller venues, especially when it comes to the classic car industry. I think the OEMs are looking for ROI. They're looking for the return on investment ultimately, and they're seeing, although they're starting to see more value in some of the smaller events and bringing attention to their brands. I think that, as Jay and Blair mentioned, with the diversification of the technology over the last few years, there's so much more hands-on to show people at these larger shows that it's drawing them back in. I think the shows, in my opinion, were stale, for a few years. You were looking at the same things. The car lines changed a little bit, the interiors changed a little bit. We're seeing such major changes that people need to not only be introduced to these, they need to have a hands-on experience to understand them. So, are they worth it? Yeah, 100%. Involving my experience with the classic car industry, I would remind everybody that the entire industry is not just an industry. The people that are coming to these shows are part of a culture. And that's something we're starting to see return after COVID, thank goodness. And so 100%. Are they worth it? In my opinion, absolutely.
Fantastic. I had a quick thought. I happened to be in China in 2019 in Shanghai at the Auto Museum, and they had a very interesting concept right near that, where they had basically a test track for electric cars that were made all over the world. So that was a very interesting sort of placement for that facility, which is right next to, I think, one of the most strange collection of cars I've ever seen in one place. From Russian copies of Chinese cars to Chinese copies of Russian cars to American cars and Italian and others. I mean, Buick being the biggest brand and market from the American side, but it was pretty interesting. But go ahead, Jeff.
I have to say, I don't think we're going to see any Russian electric cars for a little while. So before the next question, Blair, I have an idea, and if you use it, I want royalties. Every show I have to ask people for royalties. The Vancouver show, our convention center here, is located on the waterfront, and the roadway that's in front of it is actually about 3 stories above the actual ground. And underneath, there's a roadway that connects the 2 buildings of the convention centers. So if you want to do a Tesla thing like they did in Vegas, you take that road underneath and offer electric shuttles back and forth get the other building running. If you use it, you call it the Jeff Polo track, okay? So next week we have a metaverse show, and many of these great people are going to argue that what an auto show can accomplish as far as selling cars can be done in the metaverse. You can actually sit there and however you watch it, you can look at the car, you can twirl it over upside down. I suppose if you have the right equipment, you can smell them, you can touch them, whatever you want. But is an show a place to sell cars? Is it a place to market cars? Or is it just a fun place for people to touch and feel them? And I'll go back to Paul because his cars are all touchy-feely cars that he gets involved with. What do you think, Paul?
Oh, you know what? For me, I think cars for me are an art form, of course, and art is tangible. It's something. It's something you can't just look at on any type of media, whether be it a screen or a piece of paper. You need to feel it. You need to touch it. Like you said, you need to smell it. Um, I'm with the times changing, but am I ready for a metaverse where I'm gonna put a headset on and I'm gonna look around the car and I'm not quite sure I'm there yet, to be honest with you. But most definitely, it has to be a tangible experience.
I agree with you, and I appreciate that. I sent Paul a private message there a little bit earlier. Can we expect to see a '68 Roadrunner with a Tesla powertrain in the near future? And he didn't answer me, but
No, I apologize. I apologize, guys. You know what? I'm at the cottage today, being Easter Monday in Quebec, so no school, and I'm actually going from my phone. So I saw it pop up, but I didn't want to touch anything and accidentally exit the program. So my apologies.
I was being my typical annoying self. And but Tim Nielsen had a question, who, by the way, joins us from that cold place in Florida, which is, what are the plans to bring in the younger car buyer to auto shows? Jason or Blair, would you like to answer that one? Jason.
Well, I think one of the things, just going back one step and to talk about, the metaverse, there's been all kinds of attempts to run digital shows, both digital auto shows as well as other, consumer shows, home shows, boat shows, etc. Nobody has found a way to bring that same kind of experience of the in-person experience to life in a successful way digitally, the way that you can really experience it firsthand. And so, I see that, there are a lot more activities going on with all manufacturers for retailing digitally, for making consumers able to see their products digitally, but there is no replacement for in-person experience. I think bringing in younger people, obviously, one of the things which is driving a lot of young consumer interest is electrification and electric vehicles. There is a huge pressure out from the government to move that way. I think all shows are going to need to embrace that and embrace social media in a much bigger way than perhaps we have in past. We have a very big active program ourselves with young schools. We normally have about 10,000 students come through the show over the course of the 10 days. We try to be all things automotive. It's not just new car buying experience, it's the whole car culture, which we have been showcasing both from classics and muscle cars, as well as the gaming side of things. That was all very big draw for us. The World Gaming Awards that we ran a couple of years ago. I think there's no one magic bullet that's just going to bring in a younger audience, but our audience that comes to the Art Auto Show in 2020, we had about 54% of them were under the age of 35. So it's a very young audience that do come to our show already. And obviously, the ones that have the money to buy products aren't necessarily in the young bracket, but even the super high-end vehicles which come and showcase at our vehicles from FAF, from their McLarens and the supercars that are coming out of some of the other Grand Touring automobiles. These folks are there because it's a long-term process of engaging the young audience and getting them excited about cars and keeping them a fan. And so, it's not one thing that has to be done in particular, but our audience is very large. Our qualified buyers are very large, and we've been growing our audience. I mean, in 2014, we had just under 300,000 people coming to the show, and last count, we were just around 350,000. So we're in a very healthy spot right now.
Terrific, thank you. Well, here in Vancouver, I do have to say, Tim, in your comment, Vancouver is a very big super and hypercar market, and our average age of those drivers, their age starts with a 2. Pretty disgusting. If you go to Florida and you see a 60-year-old guy sitting there trying to, forgive my term, pick up younger people, Here, they're usually a 23-year-old going, whatever they do, they just do. It's pretty interesting. But Blair, seeing as how we're talking about our home here, what do you think? Is it a place to sell cars? Is it a place to market cars? Obviously, it's fun, but is it just a fun place?
I think it's all of those. As Jason said, the value to the manufacturers is pretty strong to have an audience that's already predisposed. They're paying money to come and see what's there. They're already engaged, and I hear all the time from folks that write to me saying, gee, Blair, I was going to the auto show to see X vehicle, and I looked around and saw everything that was there, and I went out and bought Y vehicle because I had a chance to sit and look at all of that was here and get in and try the seats and find out how my phone connects to it and all of those things. So there is lots of value to the show and the audience that comes. On the EV side of things, again, this is something that's very valuable and important to manufacturers. They've spent billions and billions of dollars researching and developing EVs. They want these things to sell, not only from the return on that investment, but also there's huge penalties coming at them if they don't meet the government targets. So having a place where everybody can come and sit in these things, ask all their questions, and take one for a test drive, a little green ride and drive. All of those things are huge value to the manufacturers, and for the consumers, it's lots of fun to get in one of these and try them out and check it out. We have lots and lots of families come to the show. We have lots of young people. In Vancouver, we have a big plaza, the Jack Pool Plaza outside where the Olympic Cauldron was from the 2010 games, where we do drive-ups of various car clubs, tuner clubs, Porsche Club, etc. That always attracts a really young audience of folks coming out to want to see all of those things. So, experientially, all the shows are looking for new ways to attract various audiences to the show and engage them more and provide greater value to the manufacturer partners that are there with us. And that work continues, I think, every day and will for as long as shows are around.
I think one of the things, just going back, that we had most success with in terms of building out a feature that brings in a younger audience. We had a special feature a couple of years ago celebrating 50 years of Hot Wheels. And that was not only engaging to kids, but adults alike who remember playing with Hot Wheels as kids. And that was a major central display on our 700 level. The following year after that, we celebrated Lego with the full-size North American debut of the Lego Bugatti. I think those kinds of activities that are really engaging to not only young, but young and old at young at heart, and those are the kind of things that will really draw a lot of interest to younger audiences as well.
And now they can literally look for car X or car Y if we can get Tesla here.
Yeah, exactly.
Ian.
Yeah, there are always manufacturers who choose not to attend shows. Even in the past, some of those hugely emotional-based brands, why or why not do you think OEMs choose to skip a show? Like, why do you think they do that? Let's start with Jason. Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, the last show we ran in 2020, we had 3 manufacturers that didn't take part, and that was Mercedes and Volvo and Maserati. And we obviously strive to get as wide a representation of the auto industry as is possible. Sometimes it's dictated by the center, and for instance, in Mercedes' case, they put a global ban on auto show participation. And that is not something that can be influenced by the local market. This is something that companies go through. They go through this process, and generally they end up coming back to the auto show after a few years away. It could be in the most recent instance. Obviously, there's been huge issues on product. I mean, with the global semiconductor issue, there are huge delays in getting products. It's very difficult for manufacturers to even secure vehicles for the auto show. In many cases. Now, we're hopeful that by the time spring 2023 comes around, the worst of that crisis has passed us by. But even still, in 2022, we were facing big issues, and we still had a lot of manufacturers taking part and still pre-ordering vehicles. I mean, we were talking to some of our largest exhibitors at the show recently, and they're already in the process of pre-ordering their vehicles for the 2023 show right now because of the time it takes, and that has an influencing factor. And another influencing factor, maybe a brand doesn't have any new product coming out in the market, and the way you stand out amongst your competitors is having something new and shiny to showcase at the show, which hasn't been seen in the country before. At least that's the case in our case. And so in some of those instances where brands don't have something new to show off, then they may decide to take a step back. But we are finding that brands, even the brands that aren't in officially, have expressed interest in participating through the dealer level. And for some of the smaller show, that's easier to do. If you take a look at some of the smaller, more regional shows, I'd call them, the dealers step in and take part where a manufacturer perhaps doesn't have the vehicles available. But dealers still have a hunger to take part in these kinds of activities, and they've been keeping our shows populated and keeping the people coming through.
Yeah, I've seen some dealers I know in the local market that do that in terms of even have collector cars or other things where maybe the manufacturer doesn't want to invest the money. But maybe Blair can speak to that.
Yeah, no, we've seen that in the past where the dealers have stepped up in circumstances when the manufacturer decides to stand down for whatever reason. Jason mentioned several of them, and dealers are happy to do that here in Vancouver when they're able to, when the manufacturer will allow them. I mean, the industry has been going through so many changes. Auto shows are going through changes. So manufacturers, of course, are exploring a variety of options of marketing their vehicles. Digital has been such a big thing for manufacturers the last number of years, and will continue to be. But I think they've all realized that the in-person experience of the show is a real clincher for the sales in the local market. Their dealers are all pushing to have manufacturers at the shows. Because they know what that does for their sales, and just builds up such energy in the market right after the show. So yeah, the manufacturers will continue to explore new ways of doing things, and the job of the shows is to provide solutions to those questions, those issues, and make sure that we're providing something that will allow the manufacturer to come and meet their needs.
Fantastic. And Paul, obviously, on the new car shows, there's one thing, but when you look at collector car shows, I'm assuming even in those shows, you do have some local dealers even making an appearance. What do you think?
Absolutely. That's the opportunity for your local dealers to step up. I mean, we see it locally outside of Vankleek Hill, Ontario. Here we have something called Auto Expo. And this started out with a small group of guys, a small classic car club. And I believe on their last show, they saw 4,000 vehicles. So yeah, you see that in a lot of the localized smaller car shows. You'll see the dealers stepping in, bringing more and more vehicles in, and I think they're seeing a great success in that, because the ratio of dealers or a representative for that brand to people that are there at the show is much better than you see at some of the larger shows. So you won't have as many people dropping in to have a look at that Ford Mustang that's sitting there, let's say. But you know what? You've got 5 guys from that dealership ready to talk to somebody, ready to show them, ready to let them feel, touch, and have that experience. So I think, I think the OEMs are seeing a great amount of value from those smaller events for sure.
Interesting.
And I have to say, there's huge value in these collector cars, because the retro styling, we're in round 16 of retro styling. Look at that Mustang Electric. And you've got people that really had no clue about the older Mustangs and
Absolutely. And what's really what I
sorry?
find really interesting too about the introduction of EVs and hybrids is what you're seeing with the collectors. It's exciting the collector industry again. For example, people are anticipating no longer being able to buy their gas vehicle, and it's now going to be electric. So they want to make sure they've got the last of the model of the gas one that was ever produced, along with the first. But you see more of that interest now that the industry is changing. They're going, wait a minute, there's more. There's going to be more items that become more valuable as a collectible item further in the years if I purchase them now and add them to the collection. So we're seeing a lot of that in the industry for sure.
Yeah, and you're seeing the resurrection of, with Volkswagen, you've got this new van coming out, which is almost a throwback, similar to the Beetle years ago. I mean, obviously, I think they should have had it years ago when they did that. I think it was the Rutan, which was not successful, but I think
Grand
they
Rutan,
learned from that.
the Grand Rutan,
Yeah, the Grand
the
Rutan.
Volkswagen Keratan.
Go ahead,
You
Joe.
know, that Volkswagen electric van's coming out. Boy, oh boy, what an opportunity there! But I have to say, if we talk about some older cars, I bet we all wish we had that '78 Westphalia that I know that I'd taken in on trade and off wholesale 10, 15 years ago for like $3,000. So we certainly, it's interesting. The way I see it is this: is there's two is going to be becoming a very interesting market. And Paul, you touched on that. There's going to be that collector, that older, that performance car, that even the big Bolts, the old Lincolns, etc., that people are going to justify to have. And I hate to say it, in 10 years they'll have to drive 20 miles to get to the gas station because there'll be less of them. But I definitely see that. But moving into the future, and I mean we've kind of touched on that. Everything that we've gone through in the industry, actually in our lives right now, is we've had to change. We're becoming current and irrelevant. Old farts like us, we're sitting there calling our tech support for things, our kids, and it's changing. And where are shows going to change, in your opinion, to maintain that degree of relevancy? Especially in the big urban markets, Toronto, Vancouver, New York. LA maybe not as much just because it's so car centric, but to keep these people interested, as Tim said, the younger people, to come to these shows because maybe the car culture for them isn't as exciting. So Jason, I'll ask you that to answer that first, please.
I think you've probably seen a little bit of how shows are evolving. If you take a look at Chicago, which just recently ran their show in February, they traditionally overlap with our show at roughly around the same time. They have gone much more in a way of live driving experiences. Indoor, they had 6 different vehicle test tracks inside their facility. New York is going the same way. They've got their own internal test track, as well as several manufacturers are building their own test tracks within their booths. I think that we'll see a lot more of that. I mean, it's easier to do if you have an environment or a time of year where you can do that indoors, outdoors. In our particular case, running in February, it's not so easy to have an outdoor kind of experience. But I do foresee us being, there seems to be big interest from some of the manufacturers that are participating in New York the same way, running an indoor electric vehicle test track. I think that's likely going to be something that we will explore in a much bigger way for our 2023 version of the show. One of the big costs of manufacturer participation in show is the money that they spend themselves on the large displays. If you take a look at the typical manufacturer that's presenting at our show, about 10% of the costs of their participation comes from the charges that we would put them out for rental of the building space. 90% of it is self-generated. And I think that although traditionally there has been a great focus on global standards and global auto show requirements, I think we're going to see more and more manufacturers willing to step outside of that. There will still be many of them that will want to have their global A kit on display, and we'll always provide that showcase for them. But in particular, where times may be more challenging, I think that there will be a desire of manufacturers to come in and present in a way which they can be side by side with some of their competitors, but not looking bad. And so a more kind of frugal opportunity to showcase the cars themselves rather than the large video walls that stand behind them, I think is something that we're going to likely see shows evolving into. And let's say there are several manufacturers that decide to pull back for a period of uncertainty, product unavailability. I think other shows are going to start to try and diversify and having more of the collector experience, more of the kind of unique supercars which people want to see, and perhaps even bringing in things such as motorhomes and motorcycles, things and trailers that you tow with your vehicles, because those are all part of the car not only culture but what you do with your vehicles. And I think you're going to see much more of that blending of different kind of shows together to create an even more engaging and more interesting auto show in the future.
Because you're seeing that a little bit, Jeff, at CES. It's becoming almost another auto show. I mean, you're seeing a lot of, like, I know Sony a couple years ago had a car that they weren't even going to build, and people are like, so anyway, go ahead, Jeff.
Actually, I'm going to have a little second part to that question for you, Jason. Are we going to look at manufacturers having to make their shows completely different now for the big urban centers that are? I'm not touching on this because I don't want to sound political, but you'll get the Toronto, the Vancouver, the New York, where there's such a huge buy-in to electric cars, and then you'll get the prairies in Canada, Dallas. Steve Granger went offline, but coming to us from Austin, or in the Midwest of the U.S. Are they going to have to tailor make their shows differently? Because obviously the uptake of the new style cars, the electric cars, is greater in these big metropolitan urban centers.
Yeah, I think they're already doing that to a certain degree. I mean, the Western shows are already very heavily focused on, let's say, the truck market, and manufacturers, because trucks are such a huge part of not only their lineup but also their profitability. They really need to be out there and showcasing those kinds of vehicles to that particular audience. I do think that we will have more focus on EVs. I mean, the Quebec market and BC market, because of the provincial additional incentives that exist there and the need to hit and zero emission vehicle mandates, there is a very heavy skewing of manufacturer participation in those markets for electric as well. But as that mandate creeps in and grows across the country, that electric vehicle showcase requirement is going to be hitting everywhere. And in particular, in a market like Toronto, where you've got a lot of people that still don't own electric vehicles. There's still a lot of questions about how do they have one? What are the key costs of ownership, and how do they get their vehicle charged? Those kinds of questions mean that we need manufacturers to be there to help answer those questions, because it's clearly something our manufacturers, consumers, are looking for. Over 60% of the people that came to our 2020 show were already considering an electric vehicle as the next purchase, and that was 2.5 years ago. So I can imagine by the time we get to 2023, that number is going to be probably upwards of 80%, I would imagine.
Although I do expect Dallas and Calgary to have the Ram TRX versus the Raptor test drive track instead of the electric test drive track. Blair, what do you think we have to do to keep the shows current and relevant as time goes along with this rapidly changing world?
Well, I mean, this is a conversation the shows have been having for some years, and as Jason pointed out, there are other things that you can bring into the show that fit nicely. I mean, a number of the new car dealers in this province are also in other businesses such as RV and boats and various other ATVs and motorsports. So we've had a number of those other products mixed in with our auto show for a number of years. The EV thing, of course, clearly we're going to build on our strength here in British Columbia and our long, decades long experience with that and the ride and drives and the partnership we have with government around the incentive program, etc. I think you're going to see a lot more effort around expanding those ride and drives and sort of test drive opportunities, both for electrics and perhaps some other vehicles as well. It's more challenging in some larger urban areas to get access to places to do that. But we're going to continue to work on that and try and grow that opportunity here in British Columbia. We're rolling up our sleeves, as I know all the shows are across Canada, North America, and the world, looking at new ways to bring the digital experience into the show and marry it with the in-person experience, and find more ways to engage on social media and other ways with consumers and the manufacturers. So lots of creative work going on behind the scenes to prepare us for this ever-changing world.
Yeah, for sure. I got a feeling to take something out of Jaws, you're going to need a bigger staging area next year for that EV ride and drive.
Well, it's that, and for we're fortunate in Vancouver in March, third week of March when we have our show. You're not freezing and full of snow and all of those things that some of our colleagues have to face. So I'm sure at some point there's going to be conversations around shifting the show schedule to provide a better sort of driving experience in some of those areas. So we'll stay tuned for all of that.
For sure. And what about the comment on different shows for different markets? Again, with the as Jason said, with BC and Quebec here, and I'm not really sure in the States with the strong government regulations. Obviously, we have to be different because starting in 3 years, I'm not sure what it is. You obviously know better than me, but we've got to be something like 30% of vehicles sold must be electric or something here.
Yeah, the various jurisdictions have various mandates, as Jason referred to them earlier. Even down into the states, a number of the U.S. states are now tied in with what California and other places are doing. Sort of the light switch has gone on in the U.S. sort of last year. I've noticed with the dealer associations and manufacturers around EVs and the real push for that. We've been at it for a decade here in BC. For us, it's trying to find the balance of all of that electric vehicle piece, but also a lot of people in British Columbia drive a truck and need a truck. At the moment, gas powered, soon to be electric. So we're trying to find the balance of making sure that we can meet the needs and have something for every possible consumer that wants to come and see the show.
Sure, although I do hear that there's going to be mandates in Alberta and Texas against EV cars for a few years. I'm kidding.
Well, at Saskatchewan at the moment, there's actually an EV tax to make up for the lost tax for fixing roads and things from the gas tax. So,
did you see that post over the weekend, gentlemen? In Australia, there's a 2 cents per kilometer tax on electric vehicles. They misbilled him for a year for $21,000.
Okay.
Wow.
So now he's fighting the government because they say they're going to deregister his car so he can't drive it if he doesn't pay them. Thought that was very interesting. But go ahead, Jeff.
That's an interesting topic, though, you said there, Blair, because it's huge. Like eventually, all the incentives have to go away. You get a place like Saskatchewan, if those of you don't know, has got a population of less than 1 million, and a land square mass equal to that, I think, of almost Pennsylvania, Larry, and New York. And they've got less than 1 million people. Somebody's got to pay for the roads. Moving right along, Paul.
Yes,
now,
sir.
You come from a different side of this. What do you think they have to do to make them current, relevant? But meanwhile, I know your side of things has more to do with car shows than auto shows, but we've already talked about the happy medium. What's your opinion coming from the outside and inside?
I think Blair and Jay covered this well. And moving forward with car shows, they're going to diversify. They're going to have to. I think in what we're hearing more is about these micro drives, test drives. Go feel the car. Go test drive the car. I think we're going to have to see the larger displays, if you will, adapt. I would encourage them to limit the displays a little bit. What I find so often is it's a stagger of cars. It almost ends up looking like a parking lot. You know what? Get rid of half of those cars, space them out, get a few more people in there to engage people to come in. When I come down to CAS, and I love CAS, by the way, when I come down to CAS, it's always a family trip for us. And side story, we'll end up going to the aquarium. I'll take my son to the aquarium right next door, and we'll go through the aquarium. And you either go through there like you're being shuttled, like herded like an animal, and you're awed by certain things that you see, but you don't get a chance to really stop, touch, and feel because it's too busy. You're just herded through the masses. But if you get the right day and the right opportunity, all of a sudden you've had a much more hands-on experience that you walk away telling others about. And I think that's what we need to see from the bigger car shows. We need to not worry about so much volume, but what we need to worry about how we engage the people that are coming into the shows. And I think if we continue to see that, which they're already kind of going down that path, if you will, but I think if we continue to see that, we're going to see even more success from these bigger shows.
An
100%.
interesting comment you made there, because I can't remember what year it was, Blair, but the show here, when I think we went to the new convention center, and you entered through one door, and it was a very narrow entranceway, and right at the door was a Rolls Royce and the Lamborghinis and stuff, which was cool, but people couldn't get in because of everybody gawking looking at those. And then, and forgive me, don't be mad at me, but then there was a zigzag through some other displays. And by the time, I just overheard, I wasn't part of the show, but I just overheard comments from people saying, well, that's cool, but can you move? So that was an interesting comment that Paul made that.
Right. And, we see that in the classic car show industry or in the markets as well. When you get to the bigger shows and there's too many people, but not enough room to engage. And you'll see this with owners. I know many owners that have been to shows that have gotten too large, and they've actually backed away from those shows and they go to the smaller ones. Why? Because they're they're about the culture. So they want to engage with people. It's hard to engage with people when you have 100 in front of you versus 10. And the other thing is, when it comes to the classic car industry, you have people, it's not an OEM bringing in a new car that they can take back to the dealership and polish. And, if they have to do any minor repairs or maintenance because of something that happened at show. No, this is somebody's baby. And they either have to allow that amount of people around it, and it becomes very crowded. So when you start to open things up a little bit, it allows for more engagement, more space, more spacious feel, and a more friendly experience.
I actually think you should be advising the manufacturers in the 2023 shows, because when they come out with their one only car and some yo-yo's belt buckle scratches it.
Right.
Ian.
Yeah, we're running tight on time, but I was curious, being that I worked auto shows 22 years ago, and I believe, and for a number of years, but I believe most manufacturers have gone to hiring people to work the shows versus the salespeople at the local dealership. Because I actually worked the show when I sold cars, and loved to work the show because I always got deals from it. But I was curious as to whether that's still the case, or whether there's still, salespeople, local dealerships who want to work those shows.
I'll just speak from our standpoint in Toronto. Most of the manufacturers will have CSRs, customer sales representatives there that will not only do Toronto, but will also travel and do other shows across the country. They train them up on the vehicles. They're knowledgeable about the vehicles. They're not pressurized. They're not salespersons, so they're not out there trying to make a sale. We do try to encourage manufacturers to have at least one sales representative on the floor at all times, so that if somebody does want to talk about pricing and that sort of thing, there's somebody there that can do that and speak to that. In Ontario, you have to be OMVIC registered to speak on certain subjects that a customer may be asking about. And that's something which I think will probably continue. Some of the experiences that manufacturers have had in past years when using just salespeople, it provides a more pressured environment, and that they want to kind of get away from that. That's one of the main things that people come to the auto show, because they can see and touch and feel the cars in a non-pressured environment. But often, if a salesperson is the sole person on the floor talking to somebody, if they find somebody that's not in their particular sales area, they may quickly lose interest in that person and shift to try to find somebody else that's in their sales region, which is not something that manufacturers want to have. But you do need that mix of knowledge about the product, as well as people that can talk about certain things of pricing. So we'd like to see a balance of that continue through all of our exhibitors.
Having worked many an auto show as a salesperson and manager, you didn't touch on it, but there's also a thing with salespeople actually having them there, because salespeople are known for their short attention span. I fully admit it, and they're off walking somewhere else.
Marty, do you want to comment on that?
No, I mean, Jason covered it well. Same situation in Vancouver. We're officially an on-selling show. There are manufacturer CSRs there, well trained, know the material, know the vehicles, can answer all the questions. in an sort of non-pressure way with consumers. But there's always dealer salespeople at the show, wandering around, enjoying the show, and are available should people have those kinds of questions. The Vehicle Sales Authority, our regulator in British Columbia, is there at the show. They have an exhibit, etc. So they're always keeping a watchful eye on those things as well.
Cool. And any final comments, Jeff? We're out of time.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Paul, I think you added just a terrific side to this, which is very nice. Before I continue, I do want to recognize just our regulars that tune into the live show. In the old days, we'd have a lot of people, but now with podcasts and YouTubes and videos and whatever else, we don't. But thank you, Larry, Tim, for joining us and tuning in. Andrew. We have Stephen Granger from Recall Rabbit way down in Austin, comes and goes depending on business, and we couldn't do it without having some fans. Hey! But thank you so much, Blair, for taking the time. Jason, it's an important thing that we need to understand, and it's funny because auto shows, when we have them regularly, it's going to go to the show. Yeah, that's okay, and that's that. Now all of a sudden we haven't had them, and it's like, oh man, I miss them. And the regular human being not involved, the human beings, not the people involved in the car business, are really comment on it, how they do miss it. But thank you,
Jeff.
so much.
Can I throw one thing in? You had books at the beginning.
Yep.
The best historical book I've ever read on the car business is The Reckoning by David Halberstam. It traces the history of Ford and Nissan in America. Halberstam's the guy that won the Pulitzer for the best and the brightest. Brilliant writer. It's called The Reckoning.
Yep.
Reckoning, from the late great David Halberstam. If you're car guys, you won't like it. You'll love it. It's brilliantly written and it's really interesting.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So,
And any final thoughts from anybody? Go ahead.
Just want to invite everybody March 22nd to 26th next year in 2023. Come to Vancouver and see our auto show.
great.
Likewise,
Blair.
I'll say the same. We're celebrating our 50th continuous year of the Modern Auto Show in February, and I hope, Jeff, your comments are correct. I think they will be. There's a lot of people that want to come back that would normally make it an annual or semi-annual tradition, and we're counting on that, and I'm sure it's going to be a very busy return to live events.
Well, I think it will. And the one thing about auto shows versus the home and garden and the RV and renovation shows, etc., is whether you like them or not, cars touch on every single person, and it's going to be a long time before the romance of the cool car is gone, and people will lose interest. So,
Paul, any thoughts on auto shows you got coming up, or anything that you're going to be showing up?
Well, you know what? I just want to say to everybody, the normalization, if you will, of everything coming back this year. I hear a lot of shows coming back that haven't been able to run in the last couple of years. I just want to wish everybody a happy and safe season. We have a very short season here in North America. No matter where you are, it goes by like this. So it's really nice to see everybody coming back together. And that's it. I wish everybody a real healthy and safe season this year.
thank you. Now, by the way, if you're any of your contacts in Europe want to pay gobs of money for a 2005 Corvette with 14,000 kilometers, totally stock, call me. Thank you, everyone. Ian?
Have a great day.